Great. I'm Simone Turek-Lee. I'm with John Burton Advocates for Youth. I'm joined by a number of colleagues today. I think as people speak, I'll let them introduce themselves. We'll keep it casual. If this is your second time joining us and you were on our call 2 weeks ago, we kicked off this coalition, bi-weekly, every other Thursday call, coming together as a group of people that care a lot about sustaining housing supports for current and former foster youth in our state budget, specifically the $13.7 million Housing Navigation and Maintenance Program and the $18.8 million Supervised Independent Living Placement, or SILP, housing supplement. As we shared not last week, 2 weeks ago, and as I'm sure you've seen the emails and information since then, the governor's January budget, which is his first sort of take on what he is wanting to see in our what he wants to set in our state budget for the coming fiscal year. He has proposed, as a result of our state budget deficit, he has proposed making some cuts. And so these are two really important programs that help young people stay securely housed and prevent homelessness. He has proposed that those two programs be eliminated, but we are still kind of a long way off from June, and there's much opportunity to shape the budget. The legislature also has to come through with their budget, both on the Assembly and the Senate side. So as our director, I think, shared previously, it's a proposal, nothing more, nothing less. It's an opportunity for us to educate the governor's office and inform them so that as they make budget decisions and other stakeholders make budget decisions, they're informed by the truth about what these programs do and don't do. So we're going into this with a very positive attitude. We are so happy that so many of you feel the same way that we do about protecting these programs and are joining us on this coalition to do this together. I know we said it before, we'll say it again. We can't do this alone. We need all of your help. We know that many of you work directly with young people, can speak to the impact of these cuts. Maybe some of you are young adults that would feel the impact of these cuts, or have peers that would feel the impact of these cuts. And we just appreciate you being on the call and being with us in this coalition. So I'm going to now share my screen and we can get started. Here we go. Okay. So feel free, we want to keep this casual. Please feel free to put information in the chat or questions. We can also pause sort of throughout to have discussion points, on some of these topics. So feel free to put your information in there. All right. So first, we're going to just have kind of the way that we're going to structure these meetings, I should say, moving forward, is sort of putting part of the first part of the meeting toward what's happened since the last meeting. So there's been updates, there's been events, there's been things that are rolling and moving, and we want to report out on what is going on in those areas. And then we also want to hear about what's going to happen between this meeting and the next meeting, and sort of also even further out, like what's to come, what to expect, and how you can continue to get involved, how you can plug into all of these efforts, and sort of dates to calendar. So first, we'll talk about budget hearings that happened, meetings that we've had, some press activity, some new materials we have. I also want to make sure people are aware of the FERS Coalition meetings that are occurring. And then we'll talk about some district meetings that are being scheduled, a new addition to our coalition letter, which is that young adults can sign on. We have a different link now. We've kind of thought of a way to not have several documents going at once, but sort of everyone signing on to the central letter. And then we have a social media toolkit and that we want you to start posting with, and some upcoming hearings that we're going to talk about. So first, I want to turn it over to JBA's lobbyist, Kathy Van Osten. Kathy is located in Sacramento. She has been doing this a long time, and she attended the recent hearings on the 23rd and wanted to talk, just share, who turned out for these hearings, how they went, in a few words. So Kathy, I'll turn it over to you briefly.
Hey, Kathy, you are muted.
Thank you. Sorry about that. So both the Assembly and Senate budget committees, the full committees, did a hearing on the governor's budget about a week ago Tuesday. So I think that was on the 23rd, if I'm not mistaken. And really, it was a forum for members to essentially give their views on the governor's budget, well, there's not a lot to love there in many respects, but many of the concerns that they had. Our focus was on the Housing Navigation Program, the first program, the Housing Navigation Program, and the SILP program. And foster care issues in general were referenced repeatedly throughout the hearing, either by members or other members of the public who spoke. Members consumed most of the hearings. They were both scheduled for, I think, about 3 hours, 3.5 hours. And they, most of the members talked through that period. So the public comment period was a little rushed. Unfortunately, there were a lot of the folks there to testify. On behalf of the SILP, the Housing Navigation, and the FERS program, we had a really great turnout. I had people commenting to me that evening at an event that the coordination was exceptional, and that the message was very clear. So I just want to give that kudos to those who, within JBay and outside of JBay, did participate. We had the California Alliance of Child and Family Services, both Purva and Tyler, testified, one at the Senate hearing and one at the Assembly hearing. Elaine Kabansky with the CWDA testified. We had the County State Association of Counties, Justin Garrett, Ella Holmes, Burrs, and Karen Romero, both from Aspiranet, who Aspiranet's been definitely helpful over the years on issues that I've worked on. Anna Johnson, going by AJ Johnson, she's was very excited to be there, from California Competes. And while they had their own issues, she also testified in support of making sure this funding is protected. Susanna Niffen, of course, Children Now, Mercedes Parker, California Youth Connection, Ann Quirk, Children's Law Center. Of course, I think these folks were at both hearings. Brittany Walker from Butterflies Haven. We actually had a couple of folks from Butterflies Haven testify. They came up from LA and sat through those hearings, to offer this comment. So we really appreciated that. And then, of course, JBay's, we've got, youth that participated and really did a great job. They were really able to pivot quickly to kind of cut to the chase when folks were starting to get cut off. So we had Wednesday Pope, Chris Hernandez, and Cody Van Felden. Those are all of, they're all in JBay's Advocates program. In the Senate, we had a Senate member that I believe was Senator Menjivar, who referenced the Housing Navigation and the SILP program specifically in her comments before public testimony ever got started. And I believe she also mentioned the FERS program. And I was able to see her after the hearing and thanked her for her comments and her attention to this and how important these programs are. Most of the members on both committees, and I'm trying to wrap this up for you. Most of the committee members pointed to issues of obviously of their own interest, but many of them also referred to cuts to foster care and that they did not like seeing the foster care programs in jeopardy, in particular housing programs. So that's essentially it. Everybody who showed up was able to testify. Both committee chairs allowed that and sat an extra hour to make sure that everybody had a chance to testify. So it was a good start. There's going to be about 64 more hearings through subcommittees as we go through the next couple of months. So we will certainly be busy with those committees, and we'll be sure to let you know as soon as we can when those hearings are scheduled.
Thanks, Kathy. I think all in all, what we've heard both from those hearings, kind of the public statements people have made, and then also what I'll share in a moment is some information about some meetings we had. But I think all in all, there's been a very positive response from the legislature in terms of, not being pleased about these cuts being proposed. And that's a good thing, obviously. So thanks, Kathy, for being there. And thanks so much to everyone, particularly those who flew to Sacramento for this. It really means a lot when legislative members see that support and makes them really understand the importance of the program. So thank you. We did an initial round of visits with legislators to kind of underscore that point, right? And to learn more about what they're hearing and their understanding of what's happening. And so we met with the committee consultant for each of the 4 budget subcommittees. So I think we shared last time, there on the Senate side, and on the Assembly side, there are various budget subcommittees that are organized by kind of topic area. So the SILP housing supplement falls into kind of a budget subcommittee that's focused on human services. And then the housing navigation and maintenance program falls into a budget subcommittee focused on, it's really called kind of state administration, but it covers sort of housing and homelessness as well. So there are really across the Senate and Assembly 4 different budget subcommittees that we want to meet with and continue to talk with their committee consultants. So we've started those conversations. They went well. We've also talked with someone from the Newsom administration about the proposed cuts. We've spoken with the child welfare and the housing policy consultant the child welfare policy consultant for both the Assembly speaker, so that's the leadership in the Assembly, and the Senate pro tem, that's the leadership in the Senate, and then the housing policy consultant for the Senate pro tem. So that's a good start. We want to share sort of what we learned from those meetings. First, like I said, some disappointment that, on behalf of the legislature, that these cuts are proposed. Also, really underscoring the importance of documenting the impact that these cuts would have on young people, which, I think is whenever we're advocating for a new policy or a new investment or defending something, that's a really important thing, illustrating what this means to human beings, right? These are not just numbers on paper. These are people's lives, and people's lives who the state is essentially responsible for caring for. And so making that point loud and clear was feedback we were given. Also, and this is important because this is something I think we shared on the last call, we had sort of a hunch about, and I think it confirmed there's some confusion around these programs, and we want to do the educating. We want to educate stakeholders so they understand what these programs are and what they do. So related to the housing navigation and maintenance program, we want to make sure that there's a clear understanding that these services are a population that relies on these services are young people with housing choice vouchers, with the FUP and the FYI vouchers, and young people who are looking to get vouchers. This is the funding that delivers that housing navigation and those services that help you turn the voucher into housing, right? If it's just a voucher, it doesn't mean anything. It's got to be housing. And so that is some education we want to make sure that people have that information. On the SILP side, I think, this timing has corresponded with some rates reform that's happening, which is great. The Department of Social Services is working on reforming the way that foster care rates work. And the idea is to center it around youth needs, not around what placement you're in. That's sort of the principle behind it. So that's a good reform principle to have. it's in the early stages, right? This is being formed right now. And it's really based around service needs largely. It is not something that's going to address, housing affordability. So we want to make sure there's not confusion between that rates reform effort, which is needed and great in its own right, but it's not going to address this housing affordability issue that the SILP housing supplement addresses with funding specifically for affording housing. So that's, I think, more educating that we want to continue to do with stakeholders to make sure that that distinction is clear. Lastly, I think just the importance of being present. So attending the budget hearings, testifying during public comment, even if it's a Me Too testimony, even if it's a one sentence testimony, I support this or I oppose this, whatever submitting written testimony, signing on to the coalition letters, but really attending every budget committee and subcommittee hearing. JBay will be there. We hope many of you will be there with us as well. And so we'll talk about this a little bit later, but this is sort of just in summary what we're hearing at these beginning stages. So I want to now ask our partner, Daniel Heinpel, to talk a little bit about a press strategy. I think you may remember Daniel and Kevin with Good River Partners hosted a kind of a strategy meeting for op-eds, these editorial pieces that get placed in newspapers, hopefully get picked up, and how to get this issue coverage in the media. And so this is something that Daniel specializes in. And he said, hey, how about I hold this strategy meeting? We said, absolutely, that would be great. So he's stepped up to the plate and is working on that, I think, with many of you. So I wanted him to just share briefly sort of how that meeting went and what's the current status of these op-eds.
Thank you. Yeah, so all we're doing here is offering editing services and services to try to get these pieces placed. I've got a lot of background in this over the years. I used to teach at Berkeley and USC, where I had students and I forced them for one assignment every semester. They would have to write these op-eds. So I'm used to editing, dozens at a time. I was teaching 2 classes concurrently. So I say that for everybody here. If you have 600 to 800 words in your body, in your mind, on whether it's a housing navigation, whether it's SILP or FERS, send them my way, and we'll make sure they get edited, and we'll help point you in the right direction. We've had 2, one written by former foster youth who wrote a really strong op-ed around the SILP supplement, and that has been submitted to the imprint. I wrote a piece that I submitted to Cal Matters. I have some back and forth with the editor, but we'll see where that goes. Nothing's real until it's published. I think Jan Judson's on the call in Yolo County. She and I have been working together on an op-ed to be placed somewhere in Yolo County, which is great. Mara, is that you, Mara Ziegler? No?
That's me. I didn't I realized I didn't let you know it got submitted, and Daniel's wonderful. Take him up on the help, everybody. It's not intimidating when you got Daniel there backing you up. So I'm waiting to hear if the Daily News writes back, and you can let me know if there's any follow-up to be done.
Yeah, and Mara, I got the email of the right person, so if we need to escalate, we can. So just I don't want to belabor this, but typically these op-eds come in at 600 to 800 words. They want to be centered in hey, Daniel Bisiano, yes, send me an email. Amy Lemley put in the chat. Let's go. So 600 to 800 words, center who you are, why this matters. I've been advising folks to kind of choose which of these measures to focus on. It's sort of hard to make the argument about all 3 in one piece. Maybe Amy Lemley, because she's the queen of foster care in California, could do it. But I think that try to keep it targeted. You only have 600, 800 words. We have Kevin, can you share the document that we put together with some talking points around the SILP supplement in particular? But please reach out. Happy to help anybody and get as many pieces out there as possible. I'll shut up. Mara, you had another thought, or your hand's just still up?
Sorry, that's it. I have to figure out how to take it down.
Okay, I'll hand it back to you, Simone.
Thank you, and thanks everybody for getting into this and writing these up. I'm excited to start seeing some sprout up and reading them. So we are going to talk a little bit about just some new materials that we have available on the website. So we're going to keep churning stuff out as we're responding to things and as we have more time to produce them. But thank you, Andy, for putting that in the chat. You beat me to it. I was just going to ask if you could do that. The webpage we have, it's jbay.org/advocate. And it's actually where sort of a lot of our advocacy materials will live sort of across also our education issues. But this is our sort of main, housing and health issue as we've shared. And so it's there first on the page. You can see it if you go there now. We've got the a fact sheet about these proposed cuts to housing navigation and maintenance program, also a fact sheet about the SILP housing supplement proposed cut. We have a social media toolkit that Amy will talk about later. We have, I want to put special attention on the coalition calls link that you see. So that will take you to a whole other page where the recordings and slides from these calls will live. Also, any sort of documents that live on beyond the day of the call. Like, I know there was a lot of stuff shared in the last meeting. Some of it's now outdated, right? So the stuff that's sort of, I don't want to say evergreen, because eventually it will not be relevant, but that's going to be relevant for the next, weeks or months, we'll keep posted there. And we'll always list sort of the next upcoming call. So I'm making sure to update it each week after this call. So that's a little place where that lives. And then the sign-on letter that I think all of you have signed on to. If not, please go ahead and do that. Each organization, we don't need each human being, but each organization, or if you're not affiliated with an organization, you can sign on your behalf. But each organization signing on to the letter using that first link on the right-hand side. And then right below it, you'll see we now have a young adult sign-on that Andy will talk about a little bit later. And you can just view the most updated version of the letter there as well. So, go ahead and check that out now or later. And I'm going to keep moving us through. One thing I know Amanda, I can see, you're a square I can see. So yeah, wave to everyone. I think you all remember Amanda from 2 weeks ago, or her otherwise. Amanda McKinney from Children Now. We shared Children Now is protecting the Family Urgent Response System, which is a $30 million program in our state budget that is also on the chopping block. It is proposed for elimination as well. This is a program we do not want to see go away. It's not just a statewide hotline for child welfare, but it's also has local mobile response teams that respond in person to issues of placement instability and other challenges that we know. Let's prevent those before they occur. So they are hosting their own coalition calls as opposed to sort of all of us kind of joining this all together. This one's going to really focus on those two kind of specific housing supports. And then Children Now's calls are Wednesday, also from 2 to 2:30 every other Wednesday. The next call being Valentine's Day. And if you want to be added to the calendar invite, you can email Amanda at the email on the screen. So we encourage you to join forces with Children Now as well on this and defend that program. Amanda, anything you want to share before the next call with folks?
Sure. Thanks, Simone. I'll just jump in briefly and say we had a great initial conversation yesterday. I really appreciate folks that were there. We've really had a lot of dialogue around how we really want to frame this education for folks. And so if you want to be part of that conversation, we really welcome it. We're going to be also kind of similarly sharing out materials through that space. So even if you can't make this time, let me know and you can get on our distribution list and you can get all of the materials, the summaries of what we talk about so that you can be up to date with what's happening with that.
Thanks. All right. So that was sort of our update section. Look, we're halfway through the call. I think we're doing okay on time. We're going to now talk about what's going to happen next. So some of these things very like in the short term, some of these longer term. First, let's talk about district meetings. So this is where I really would love for people to, if you've been multitasking, I get it, it happens. We all do it. Stop multitasking for a second. And we really want to engage people here. Would you mind, Andy, dropping Amanda's email into the chat? Or Amanda, I guess you could also do that. Someone drop it into the chat. But we are scheduling at least 6 district meetings, and we really want people to attend these meetings with us. We are, like I said, talking to the chairs for these relevant budget subcommittees and the overall budget committee. So there's the Assembly Budget Committee, the Senate Budget Committee, and then, like I said, on each side, there's 2 relevant kind of topical subcommittees. So we want to meet with these 6 chairs. They're senators or they're assembly members, and you can see who they are on the screen. They each represent a specific district in California. Some are smaller districts, some are more vast districts. We want to know who can attend these meetings with us. We don't want to attend just I show up, hello. We want to have people who are from these communities who can speak to what constituents in these communities care about. So for example, for Senator Skinner. Now, I happen to be in Senator Skinner's district. So I think she cares what I have to say, but I am not in Stephen Padilla's district. He's going to care a lot more about what someone in San Diego has to say. And that's just what it is. They represent us, geographically. Not to say they don't care about the state as a whole, but they really are there to listen to their constituents. And so if you work for an organization or are located in thanks, Daniel, in a district that is on the screen, we want you to attend with us. So I'm going to go through this little list, and I just want people to put in the chat, and this is not signing your life away. Like, we get that things come up, but if you think you might be able to attend, please do let us know. We want to take that information down and then follow up with you. And I'm just going to pull up, I took down where these district offices are too, just not that, I know people can travel a little bit, but just good to know sort of where you'd be traveling to. So I'm going to say the kind of the district, and then if you can put in the chat in response your name, your organization, your email address, and which city or county you're in. Andy's going to record that, and we'll follow up with you later so that we can try to get these meetings planned. How it will work is I'll schedule these meetings, and then I'll follow up with people. And not everybody's going to be able to attend everything. We get it. People's schedules vary. But our idea is to have as many people sort of potentially plugged in as possible, so we at least have a critical mass for attending the meeting. So let's start on the left here. And you can tell I'm trying to multitask because I'm pulling up another link. So bear with me for just 1 second. I've got, between Zoom and these documents, I've just got way too many things open on my screen. So just give me 1 moment here. Here we go. Okay. So let's start with Senator Stephen Padilla. So he covers a large, you can see he covers areas in 4 different counties. So San Diego, Imperial, Riverside, San Bernardino. His district office he has a district office in Chula Vista, El Centro, and Indio. So I don't know if that gives you any inclination, but if you are in any of these counties and you think you can attend a meeting with us sometime in the next, let's say, 3 weeks, please enter that information into the chat, your name, your organization, your email address, and then you can say, Padilla or San Diego or Imperial or Riverside or San Bernardino, something that'll give us a clue. So if Andy misses you, we can look at the transcript later and get it. So that is the budget sub number 4 chair, and that is the subcommittee that covers sort of housing and homelessness. So let's move on to the budget chair for subcommittee number 3. And this is on the Senate side again. So this is the subcommittee that covers human services. So that's where the SILP housing supplement would be sort of covered. And this is Senator Carolyn Menjivar. She represents Burbank and San Fernando Valley. her district office is located in Van Nuys. So if you are located in Burbank or in the Valley somewhere, again, please name, organization, email, and some inclination of that location. And we'd love to follow up with you. All right, moving on to here in the Bay Area. This is the budget chair of the whole of the Senate Budget Committee, Nancy Skinner. She represents Richmond, Berkeley, Oakland, and San Leandro. So if you are located, and her office is in Oakland, if you're located in one of those areas, please indicate so in the chat. Okay, moving on to the Assembly. We have the Budget Subcommittee number 5 chair. And number 5 is now, they just switched these numbers. Number 5 is covering housing and homelessness. I hope I'm not remembering that wrong. And this is Assembly Member Sharon Quirk Silva. So Chair Sharon Quirk Silva, and she represents Buena Park, Cypress, Fullerton, Stanton, La Palma, and West Anaheim. Her district office is oh, I see what happened. Oh, I see, Andy, you've added some more rows. I freaked out thinking this disappeared. Okay, so her district office is in La Palma. And so if you're located in any of those areas on the screen, please indicate so, and if you're able to attend. Let's move on to Budget Subcommittee number 2, which is Human Services. And Corey Jackson, Assemblymember Corey Jackson, is the chair. He represents Riverside County. His office is located in Moreno Valley. So if you're located in Riverside County, please indicate so if you have not already. And then lastly, we've got another Riverside County legislative member. So again, you can just say Riverside and we'll know you could potentially be in either, but this is Assembly Member Jesse Gabriel, and he is the overall budget chair for the Assembly. So I'm not monitoring the chat. I'm hoping there's a lot of activity. Those are our district meetings. I will reach out to anyone who's indicated a possibility of attending. I also want to kind of plug thinking about young adults that you work with or that you know that might be interested. Oh, did we make a mistake? Someone said Jesse Gabriel's not Riverside. Do we have a typo? I'm going to ask Amy if you can get the accurate information while I kind of move on, and then we'll correct it in a second.
Yeah, Jesse Gabriel represents the East San Fernando Valley.
He's an Encino,
so
right?
Similar to where Senator Menjivar is.
That's right. Encino is his office, right? I think it's in Encino. So sorry, you guys, we'll change this slide. I think it was just like a typo. So if you're in the Valley, we'll plug you in for Gabriel as well. But yeah, so feel free to keep putting your information in the chat. Sorry about the typo. And we'll follow up with you as these meetings are scheduled. And thanks everyone for bearing with us. I know this is a very informal way to gather participation, but we're trying to spare everyone going to another link and filling out another survey. Okay, so I'm going to move us along, and I'm going to pass it over to Andy. I know Andy, you're probably still taking things down from the chat. We can reconvene on that later, but if you can take a moment just to talk about this coalition letter, sort of recruiting young adults to participate in this letter, that'd be great.
Thank you, Simone. And somebody muted me.
I think it was accidentally me trying to mute myself. Sorry. No
worries. Thank you all. As someone alluded to, there's a ton of energy in the chat. A lot of folks are signing up. We'll really appreciate that. It's going to go a long way. As we've mentioned, we have this very successful sign-on letter. I know a lot of you have already signed on to it, and we really do appreciate that. What we have decided, I'm going to drop the link here in the chat, is to actually open this up to youth, to be able to provide their own testimony, be able to provide their own quotes about how these programs have been meaningful for them, and be able to provide, again, that personal touch, if you would. So if you click on that link here, we've added some more boxes where youth will be able to provide their name, their age, the opportunity to be added to a list if they want to be able to engage in future advocacy. And then we have some fill in the blank to finish the quote. as well as a space for a unique quote where each youth can talk about their experience in a SIL with a housing voucher or just any housing challenges in general. We're going to be gathering these and then again adding these individual names to the end of the letter, as well as adding some of the best quotes that we're able to find to be able to tell the story of the importance of these programs. What we are specifically asking of you all today is to get the word out, because our goal is to, and I think we're going to surpass this honestly, by February 15th, to get 250 youth sign-ons. By the end of the month, to have 500 youth. And again, I think, knowing you all, I think we're going to surpass that. But what we're specifically asking is to post this link on your social media. And I know Amy's going to be talking a little bit about social media in just a second. We want you to circulate this to any of your program participants, and ask your program participants to also share the link with their peers who may also be participating in these programs. And then lastly, just put it in any newsletters, public-facing newsletters you have that are reaching youth, and anything that we're not thinking of, frankly, where you have reach with youth. We encourage you to just get that word out and reach out to as many youth as possible with this link and encourage them to share their stories.
All right. I was just responding to someone who said, I'd love to attend as a young person with lived experience. It just depends if travel costs can be covered. So I just want to share, oh, Amy read my mind. Amy's like, are we going to mention travel costs? Yeah, so I just wanted to share that's something we should have mentioned, that if cost is an issue, if travel cost is an issue for anyone, reach out, because we definitely don't want that to stop people from being able to access this process, the advocacy process and the experience. So we have some budget that we could cover travel costs. So please don't hesitate if that is an obstacle. Now I'm going to pass it to our director, Amy, and she's going to round us out with sort of our last two agenda items, and then we'll talk a little bit. I want to hear from you all. So Amy, go ahead.
Well, this next one is just social media toolkit. So if you follow that link, you will see a document that has posts. They're not branded. They don't have our logo. If you want to change the color, if you want to change the message, this is a very open source kind of thing. I think, so if you could post once a week, we sure would appreciate it. But also, if you follow those 6 and even 8 key legislators and engage on their social media. I know that, with Senator Menjivar, she mentioned SILP. I went on and thanked her for that. Again, I don't think this is the ingredient that's going to make the difference. But it is one thing we can do. It's very low barrier. It doesn't take a lot of time. And so this is something, another small piece of the puzzle that we're trying to put out there to educate people about the impact if these programs are eliminated in a respectful, appropriate way. Definitely not disparaging anyone's intentions or anything like that. So yeah, and if anyone has any trouble with the images, just reach out and we can figure it out. But it's all kind of a downloadable social media toolkit in Canva. So yeah, then next slide, please. Then budget hearings. So the Assembly has put out in the Daily File budget hearings, and the 2 that are bolded are kind of they're all important. And we definitely got that message when we did our meetings, which is let's take the time to really show up and to, request that the legislature sustain the investment for the SILP supplement that it just made. It's not even 8 months old. But there's lots of competing priorities and a lot of people are doing the same thing. And so it's important we're there marching out this information and making this request. And so these are the hearings. If each of your organizations, if you're Sacramento based, it's a very different proposition than if you're LA based. But if you could know that these are happening. Each of these have some nexus with the issue at hand. So, for example, there are hearings that are about aging issues. That is not on this list of hearings. These are all have a clear relationship to either the Housing Navigation and Maintenance Program elimination or the SILP Housing Supplement elimination. And so from looking at the agenda for all of these, we feel like there's a good rationale for making public comment at each of these. And so we're going to do our best to be there at all of them, have our young people at all of them, and we would love to be there with you at all of them. If you can only make two, the April 3rd and the 9th ones, I would say on the assembly side are going to be very key. Of course, this is just the assembly side. There'll be a similar number of hearings on the Senate side. And as we talked about in our first meeting, it's just a lot of hearings. But I believe, slow and steady wins the race. We'll keep, and really as time goes past, things start concluding, it's, I think more, it's important at every step, but it's really important at the beginning. If we can really make a strong case in the beginning, I think we will be very successful. Towards the end, some of these are just like hearings for open items. We don't want to be one of those open items. We want there to be consensus that both of these programs the legislature wants to sustain. So yeah, Daniel has his hand raised. Do you want to let him speak, Simone? Can you? Simone, you're muted.
Sorry, Daniel, you're unmuted. Go ahead.
Okay, I was just waiting. I was just gonna ask, if there's any exploration of how we could use people power, because I sit in a lot of these meetings all day, every day, and it just confuses me how we give them so much power. We appointed these people. We should be able to navigate how to use our power to create more change and stop allowing them to make decisions on our behalf. I think it's important, and it's always talk about, oh, how can we get them to do this, or how can we get them to do that? Why isn't it more like, well, they need to do this or they need to do that? Because we're the ones with the power. I want to remind everybody, we're the ones who appointed these people. So how do we take that back and use it? That's my question.
Well, I'd like to share, I think these district meetings, I really do believe there's a special quality to those meetings. You're in the community where the person is from. You are a constituent. You may have literally voted for them. I find that those will be with the actual member. A lot of times these meetings are with the staff member, but we are working very hard to get those district meetings with the member. And I think that you're making a very fair point. These are people that, the constituents have elected. And I do feel like those can be a really powerful conversation about, this is my priority as your constituent. I feel like the whole tone of those meetings can be a little bit more impactful for that reason, because when you're in the Capitol, you're meeting with a staff member who might have 15 or 20 or 25 of these meetings a day, versus really slowing it down, really talking about the community where this elected official represents, and really painting a picture of what these cuts will mean to real young people that you serve, or if you're a young person, to you. So yeah, I think you're making a really fair point. I mean, it's what we've heard from our first round of meetings is a real interest in engagement, wanting, inviting, very much no one is saying we're excluded. They want to hear and they want to know, and they're really encouraging us to be fully engaged in this process. No one is sending the signal that we aren't, that we're doing anything inappropriate. They're just like, please, participate actively in the process so that we, as your elected officials, can make the best decision on behalf of young people. So we don't want to pull any punches. We want to be direct and clear about the impact. And I think we can do that in a way that's also respectful, so that we're not alienating. Again, it's a big state, it's a complicated state. And this isn't the right decision. There is a way to make a different decision in the grand scheme of things. And that's what we're going to ask them to do. So good point. We do have power. I mean, and we should use it. That's what our responsibility is. So I'm glad you raised that. And I think, so these are hearings again. We'll be sending out some calendar invitations. And we appreciate if you'd accept them. And then we'll just, again, we're going to have these meetings every other week. We'll be talking about the next hearing, but we kind of, at least on the assembly side, know what that series of dates are. So kind of with that, I'm going to hand it back over to Simone, who was going to open it up for maybe some conversation, you know, what people are hearing. I'm sure other people are doing calls and having conversations about this. And if people want to you know, share what they're hearing, share what they think, you know, I think that's there's a lot of value in that.
Yeah, and I think another point to make is that these proposed cuts are coming from one entity, one very key stakeholder, the governor's office, but they're not coming from the legislature. You know, the legislature still has to develop their budget and put that out. So I think it's also good to just know that this isn't a widespread, you know, this is when we go to these district visits, it's can we continue to count on your support versus we disagree with you, because they haven't proposed that. So I think that's also a good thing to know. And the other thing is, I just want to respond to someone's question about what time is the February 20th hearing. So it's always tricky when they say upon adjournment of session. It means whenever they end their session. We don't have an exact time. And Kathy, are you still on the call? Maybe, I mean, you are doing this so often, you could probably speak to the average time that the meeting might start. What's the best time estimate, do you think?
If we are looking at February 20th, there should not be a lot of bills on the floor. So I would not, session generally starts at 9 o'clock. So I would shoot for maybe 10 to 10:30 seems reasonable at that snapshot in time. I don't see the Assembly or the Senate, frankly, going very long during February for their floor sessions.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Someone asked a question that is the SILT being proposed to be cut, or is the proposal cutting the increased amount of SILT payments? That's a really good question. I've actually been wondering if there was confusion there. So the SILT, as you know, is a foster care placement, and they're not proposing to cut this foster care placement. This is a placement that will remain available, and it's in fact the most utilized placement, 43% of non-minor dependents in the placement. What's proposed for cut is the additional money that young people were going to receive starting in 2025, according to the local cost of housing. So in counties with really expensive housing, young people really struggle to afford housing, obviously. And so it was to, instead of have this like flat statewide rate, we'd have a rate that would be dependent upon where you live and how much housing costs where you live. And it would increase the amount for everyone. It would just increase the amount more for people who live in really expensive counties. So that is what is proposed for elimination, is that additional funding. But I want to open it up, and feel free to, I mean, you can chat in the chat box or raise your hand and speak, but is there anything that anyone has, any activities that people have been engaging in, whether it's talking with members of the legislature or the governor's office or local stakeholders, county folks, are there any conversations that people want to share or questions that you want to ask about all of this? Well, while people are thinking about what they want to say, I'll just add that one other person asked sort of, could they create a video out of the social media posts? Absolutely. Please take these posts and make them special, make them more, put social media magic on them. Like, I know that there's like there is no end to what we can now do on social media. There's so many options. You can do reels, you can do stories, you can do posts, you can go live, you can do all these things. Whatever you know to be the best format for getting the word out, go forth. We do not own these posts. We don't have, do what you need to do to them to get them out there. You can, like Amy said, put your logo colors on them, alter them, whatever you need to do to get them out to your followers on social media, please do. Any other questions or thoughts that folks have? Someone said, is there value in making our representatives aware if they're not one of the 6 committee members coming from San Joaquin Stockton? Absolutely. You know, every member of the legislature is ultimately going to be involved in this process, you know, of determining what essentially the legislature's budget will be. And so while the key decision makers are often on budget committees, I mean, these people are still decision makers. So absolutely, if you want to have discussions with your local senator or assembly member, even if they're not on a relevant budget committee, that's great. So yes, absolutely. And someone said, do you know if there are any advocacy activities for the Bringing Families Home program? You know, that's a good question. I'm going to ask if any of our other fellow child welfare advocacy partners on the call are engaged in any efforts to defend Bringing Families Home, like Children Now or CLC or CYC. Is anybody aware of like an ongoing coalition call or other activities? Or CWDA or anybody Alliance? Reimagine Child Safety is that the name of the coalition, of a coalition? Okay, Mercedes, do you want to unmute and share what you know?
Sure. And I'm hoping that I'm actually answering the question. I hope I didn't mishear the question. So Reimagine Child Safety is a coalition. There's 2 coalitions, one that serves LA and another that is recently forming out of the Bay Area in Northern California. And so that coalition is really thinking about how do we support families prior to them even getting involved in child welfare, to navigate the racial disparities that families experience when going through family separation. Something that's coming out in Northern California that is becoming more or generating more momentum is mandated supporting instead of mandated reporting. So I don't have too much more information about it, but if you're interested in learning more, I can connect you with folks that are able to answer more questions about it.
Thank you. Does anyone else have any relevant activity that they want to share?
I don't know if this is oh, sorry.
No, go ahead. I was thinking your hand was raised from earlier, but maybe you re-raised it. I'm sorry if I was ignoring the hand. Go ahead.
No, it was raised from earlier. But I was just saying, I don't know if this is relevant, but I do have a community radio show in Boyle Heights, and I feel like we could use that radio show to uplift and educate the community, because it is one of the communities that are oppressed by a lot of these laws. But I don't know if that's relevant, but that's also a way, to use our creativity and our social networks. It's on 101.5 FM and it's through Boyle Heights Arts Conservatory. So yeah, if any of you guys are interested in working with me on figuring out how to use that, then I'm game.
That's awesome. That's so cool that you have a radio show. Let's think about how to use that, because that's a platform right there. But yeah, I think so. In terms of Bringing Families Home, Vlada, your question, I'm drawing a blank in terms of if there's a specific organization that's leading the charge to defend that program. We'll check into that and get back to you. But I don't think it sounds like no one here knows of a specific sort of organization leading the charge. Well, we are at 2:57. Any last thoughts that anyone wants to share? All right, so we will see everyone hopefully, and anyone else you would like to bring to the call in 2 weeks. So that would be the 15th. And we will probably be in touch before then, like I said, about district meetings and other fun stuff. So thank you so much for joining. We have enjoyed this hour with you, and I hope you have a great rest of the week.
I have a quick question for you, Simone, if possible. Oh,